It's been called the most ambitious sustainable mobility project in Europe. It's been said that it will change public transit in Paris forever. It's the Grand Paris Express, and it will cost billions of dollars to complete. The Grand Paris Express, in basic terms, is a massive overhauling of the entire railway system in Paris, France, as it stands. It describes itself as a fundamental rethink of the entire Paris metro area. It aims to unite the city with new routes that support what's called a polycentric development, which is a way of giving multiple urban centers within a city the same amount of equity. Basically, this is a way of equalizing different communities in Paris. The plans for Grand Paris are pretty extensive. We're talking about the construction of 4 additional lines altogether. Then we have the 68 new interconnected stations. Then 100% of the lines will be automatic, with 90% of them being built totally underground. The result should be that more than 2 million new passengers will be able to find a train every 2 to 3 minutes across 200 kilometers of brand new railway. The trains will have a top speed of 110 kilometers an hour, but will usually go from 55 to 65 kilometers an hour. What should be extremely obvious by now is that none of this is going to be cheap at all. The estimated budget for the project was around $28 billion. This has already ballooned significantly now to an estimate of around $54 billion. This has made it historically one of the biggest projects in Europe. Ground broke on new lines in June of 2015. It will be carried out in phases all the way to the projected end date of 2030. If all goes well, this influential project will take up to 150,000 cars off the roads of Paris. This will in turn reduce 81,000 tons of carbon emissions each and every year. A major portion of these new railway systems will be underground. That means a 2-lane subway tunnel needs to be constructed 55 feet below the surface. So how exactly is that done? They will use massive tunnel boring machines that will dig through the 55 feet little by little every single day. This is an extensive process that requires contractors, engineers, designers, construction workers, and laborers working for roughly 15 years to bring the latest underground Parisian masterpiece to life. Not all heroes wear capes, some of them wear hard hats. While the primary goal for this railway is to reduce the city's carbon footprint by giving people an easy option to use instead of driving their cars, it also is a real boon to the city's economy. It's been estimated that the project will create directly or indirectly over 150,000 jobs throughout the city. Some of those jobs will come from redefining what a station looks like altogether. They will be beautiful spaces that are far more than somewhere to just run through to find your train. They will be transformed into places Parisians will come to enjoy together, with new shopping experiences, eating options, and of course the jobs all of this will bring. Not only that, but they will be gorgeous. The designs are wondrous architectural marvels, far better than most of the stations around the world. The hope is that it will also make them easier to find in the complicated city. It's a lot easier to give directions to the station when the station looks nicer than most museums. Not only that, but by uniting the city with a better system, it would give workers in Paris new access to opportunities once thought to be impossible. It truly is a means for the city to work together to build a bright new future. So what exactly is behind the push to make the greatest railway in Paris history? Well, it's all part of a much bigger goal for one of the nicest cities the world has ever seen. In 2015, the world learned of the international treaty known as the Paris Climate Accords, or the Paris Agreement. This all came from the 2015 United Nations Climate Change Conference. The agreement was signed on April 22, 2016, which was, of course, Earth Day. The ceremony itself was held in New York, though, instead of Paris. The entire agreement seeks to keep the rise in mean global temperature below 3.6 degrees Fahrenheit. It also looks to limit the increase to 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Overall, the emissions need to be cut by 50% by 2030 and reach a net zero by the middle of the 21st century. This would massively reduce the effects of climate change on the planet. Of course, since the entire agreement is named for the city of Paris, obviously that city needs to lead this charge. That is exactly their plan too. They have set a goal to be carbon neutral or completely powered by renewable energy by 2030. They have started the ambitious Paris Climate Action Plan, which looks to make this goal a reality. This plan has over 500 actions and will completely change the city itself. The plan is to renovate buildings, rebuild infrastructure, and look for new ways to reduce the carbon footprint as much as possible. So obviously, the Grand Paris Express would be the greatest move forward for this goal. Of course, that's not the only project the city is investing in. In order to keep a smart city or green city, Paris will have to innovate as much as possible. That includes the new form of insulation known as reshaken, which is a quick-to-install way to help energy-intensive buildings accelerate thermal renovation. Then there's green floor, which is a new underfloor AC ventilation and heating system that massively reduces energy consumption. And then we've got the coolest one. That's the massively ambitious Power Road. It features a heat exchanger into the roadway. It stores energy which can be used to heat nearby buildings. None of these are exactly cheap, but they may help save a great deal for the city in the long term. The Power Road alone could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more than a normal road would. No one said being a leader in the climate change fight would be cheap or easy. Paris is no stranger to this exact kind of innovation as well. In the mid-1800s, Paris was facing a very similar crisis. Overcrowding, disease, and crime had infested the center of the city. Then came Haussmann's renovation of Paris, which occurred from 1857 to 1870. It was just as vast a public works program as the one today. Emperor Napoleon III tasked Haussmann with modernizing the entire city. Medieval structures were decimated, new parks were created, and new infrastructure was built. While scandal nearly ripped the whole thing apart, Haussmann is largely credited for the street plan and appearance of the famous city you know today. Then came the construction of the Paris Metro in July of 1900. It was conceived of in 1896 to solve the city's congestion issues. The construction began 2 years later before completing a few years after that. It has since become the second busiest metro system in all of Europe. It does appear that history is repeating itself once again. Paris is once again leading the charge for other urban centers to follow suit to create new. Other cities across the world are also leading the sustainable city charge, though most of them aren't dropping billions on one of the most extensive underground railways in the world. For instance, we've got New York, which is spending millions across the city to become a greener metropolis. That includes protecting the city's water reservoirs, new bike lanes for private bikes or rentable city bikes, mass urban gardening projects, and its successful fight to massively reduce its carbon footprint. Today, it produces less than 3% of the nation's greenhouse gases. Consistently rated the greenest city in the world is Copenhagen, Denmark. Bikes are the main form of transportation. It has heavily invested in renewable resources and is pretty much leading the charge in every way imaginable. Paris, France sits behind both of them, as it sits in the 7th place as one of the top 10 most sustainable cities in the world. Their new railway system might just help them break the top 5. If you're thinking about building a new subway system, you should know that they usually cost around $1.3 billion a kilometer. Things were so much easier in Sim City.